Hey up and welcome to the Temple of Blair episode Z or Z depending on where you're coming from. This is an interview with Roadrunner's head of sales in the early to mid 90s, Jim Saliby. Jim's been around the block in terms of the music industry. He's been in all sorts of places, Metal Blade, Mercury, now working at Universal. But we do go into the minutiae of the sales arm and how that all works. And it's a really interesting one, a la the Richard Bengloff conversation, if that's the kind of conversation you were into. But yeah, loads of interesting little tidbits in this one, and I certainly enjoyed it a lot. So thank you very much, Jim. Let's jump straight into it. 1, 2, fuck shit up.
What enamored you to Roadrunner?
I'm a child of metalcore, I think is the way to describe it. So
Okay.
I'm a massive fan of Trivium, Killswitch Engage, those Mike Gitter bands, and I went off on the deep end with them really, and I started just understanding that little red logo in the corner became synonymous with that kind of quality and that kind of vibe. And as I say, I think why I was enamored by Roadrunner is because no one's done anything like it since.
Yeah, well, I guess I was blessed enough to work for Roadrunner, which I say would be the biggest independent label at the time, and then on a global basis. And then I also was blessed enough to work for Victory Records.
Yeah, yeah.
That was, I would say, then they became, as Warner Brothers ate up Roadrunner, Victory was still an independent. Mm-hmm. And between all the hardcore, and then they kind of moved into the emo, with Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, Hawthorne Heights. I mean, it was printing money. It was ridiculous. And then metalcore came into play with bands like Amur, A Day to Remember, things like that. So yeah, I was lucky enough to work for both labels.
Yeah. So yeah, your perspective will be incredibly unique.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it bums me out because with Roadrunner, I mean, it's kind of just an imprint within Warner Brothers, and then they've brought the imprint back because it's a brand, but it'll never be the same.
Never.
It'll never be the same, and they're just, I think, probably other than like catalog, probably the only young thing that's on there is Code Orange.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue Trivium's still young, but
yeah, you're right. I mean, Trivium as well, because Trivium actually was on Victory at one point.
Were they?
Yeah.
For the what's it called?
I believe so. I might have to go back and look. I might just to make sure, but I'll look after we get offline.
Yeah.
I believe. I thought it was, but anyway, that's okay. So then how did you start out did you reach out to Case?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Case has obviously didn't do any interviews or anything like that. So I've had a few people ask me that question, and the answer is just a resounding no, because I know he won't be interested.
He's a bit shy in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, if I was presented with an audience with Case, even in the run-up, I'd pretty much say, to keep the mysticism, I'd do a long-form interview with Case, and then at the end of this project, I'd have it as like a treasure hunt. If you're that bothered about all these long-form interviews I've been doing, here's like an online treasure hunt, like the Cicada 3301. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that kind of thing. I'd put it behind many different veils, so anyone who really cares can find it. But to give it that sense of mysticism, because I know he likes that.
He's also kind of a matter of fact kind of guy.
Yes.
So it's like he's like he in a typical kind of like Dutchman / German kind of like mentality. It's one word answers.
Yeah. It'd be interesting though, because there's so many different perspectives, so many different narrators, if you will, who see things very differently. And obviously in the music industry, everything is remembered slightly differently. So it'd be interesting to get it from the horse's mouth, so to say. Yeah.
Yeah, because I got there, I think, maybe 92. I think 92 I got there.
Okay.
Because I worked for, I started on retail, in Chicago, and then
Mhm.
I'll just try to get you fast forward quickly through that.
Cool.
Started managing a band. Band got signed through Metal Blade, through Faley and Slagle.
Mhm.
They brought me to the Concrete convention. Do you know Concrete Management and Marketing?
No, I'm not aware.
Oh, that's another historical company. They were a company they had a management company at the time when I joined. They had Kip Winger and they had Metal Church. And then on the marketing company, they had, for when metal started to boom, they were like an outsourced service for all the labels, manager companies, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, okay.
And what happened is they have a convention. I think it was 10 years plus. So think about being in a hotel,
Mhm.
the hotel with the Sheraton Burbank, and it's taken over by all metalheads. And you've got, over the course of the years, you've got Iron Maiden playing in the hotel, Judas Priest, Anthrax, Slayer playing in a hotel over the time. And then you got panels. So you got the panels where it could be me with Lon Friend from Rip Magazine, with Lane Staley, with what's his name from Navarro, so you'd be on a panel. So you'd have fans, you'd have industry. So they brought me out to the first Concrete convention, the Metal Blade people, and then Concrete hired me. Well, it ended up, the marketing company became so big because metal became such a boom. Our clients were Alice in Chains and Slayer and Metallica, and the long list of the 80s. And then the management company, we ended up with Rob Zombie, White Zombie, as well as Pantera.
Wow.
So that's a fascinating story in itself as a company as well. And so many people went on to do great things. But anyway, then I was at at Concrete. An investor came to me and said, why do I need to pay your company? I'll pay you, and you start the label. Everybody wanted to get into the business at that point, all kinds of money, with money and stuff, because they were enamored, with sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Of course.
Really, that's what it was. And dudes that had money said, I want to be in the game, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I started a label with the money. It was very successful, got off to a great start. I did a deal with Red for US distribution. I did the rest of the territories with Case. And then Case, actually, I think a year and a half into it, he said, I want to hire you. And they hired me as the vice president of marketing for the company. And so I left Energy Records. That was a label. So we went from Metal Blade to Concrete to Energy very quickly. We went through that whole process between 89, I made 90 and 92. I joined Roadrunner. I joined as a vice president of marketing. When I first got there, we were in a circle, all of our desks were in a circle in one room. And so you were it's very odd. I never worked in a situation. I mean, it was open. It was an open office before there were open offices. I mean, literally, the guy next to me, the guy next to you, it was like a big one circle. And
capital O for open.
Yes. And one small conference room. And then the administrative people were in a back room, Doug and everybody else in the other room. And, and then eventually moved into a nice office. And Case came up to me, he said, in his very one word kind of way, he says, fire the sales guy. I want you to be the sales guy because you know how to speak to people. You're great at presenting, you're whatever. And I go, I don't want to be a sales guy. I like what I do. He goes, you will be the sales guy. I go, all right, I'll be the sales guy. And so I became the sales guy, and that's how it became. But it's given me a great career that I'm still working. I'm at Universal Music now with one of their subsidiaries. And, but that's how that happened. So that's kind of the quick story of how I got there and how I started out as the marketing guy, head of marketing, and then I became the head of sales.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you if they created that position for you on the basis that it still was like in its infancy, the US office and the expansion.
I guess without having, I'm not having an ego or anything, but I became the face to the company to the outside
Right.
in the US because I had a great way of speaking, presenting, negotiating, and coming up with ideas to get you to where you needed to go.
Right.
So that's kind of the intro into it. And then I think you asked a question about, I guess one question would be about the whole typo thing, right?
I had one about the typo thing, but I did have one before that, which was what the role included. Just because from a record company, because I obviously work in the financial industry, regrettably. So my idea of retail is different from a record industry idea of retail. So I was going, I think you've read
do you want to ask questions, or should I tell you what it is?
I'll frame it by saying, was the role, as you say, is the face of the company, but at the same time, as the head of sales, you'll probably have some input into the P&L. You'll be looking at every product and working with the product managers to say, this record needs this budget to push, this record's not going to work, or whatever. I was wondering if that was kind of what was the scope of the head of sales, especially at that time in the CD boom.
Well, the head of marketing put the overall, which I did at one point, you put the overall arching plan together and present that to, I guess at the time, Doug and Case, and your finance guys. So you making sure that, okay, we spent X to sign, we have X for tour support, which is recoupable, but then there's the marketing costs, which aren't recoupable. And there is marketing costs both on the, I call it visibility side, which is more marketing, for radio and promotion and for video, etc. And then there's the sales side as well. So those are the hard costs that are not recoupable. And so what you do is you obviously put together I used to put together like a grid of all the accounts. And what I did is I put together what the marketing would be, what I'm getting in return, and what the costs are, and what I'm getting in terms of the units. And then the units, you'll know basically after you break down manufacturing and royalties and all the other stuff, how much profit or EBITDA you'll make off of that after you get going. But if you could get a no matter where I've worked at all the different labels I've worked, if you can get a velocity and the going on a record, it kind of takes care of itself, and you're spending less and less money going forward because now there's a demand for it. So supply and demand. So I don't have to spend the money for the visibility retail wise. It's all coming more free as you go forward in that.
And that would probably be, I was going to say that would probably be kind of absorbed by the retailer once you build a relationship with them in a weird way, because you'd spend X on marketing, but the more you work with certain people, that kind of arm would automate itself in a weird way because they know what they sell, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a trust factor. You have to be able to manage your company's expectations and making sure that you don't get over your skis and you keep the profitability there, but you also have to earn the trust of the retailers from both sides. So it's a balance of giving them what they need within reason, but also making sure that you're keeping checks and balances with your own company. I found, what I think what Case liked about me is that, like, I would start out, I would take out the buyer to dinner. I said, hey, why don't you send something home, let's get something for your wife. Bring her, what kind of dessert do you want? See, you said the dessert and that. So then they, you bring home the cheesecake or wherever they bring home and that. Next time I go, bring your wife along, so now you bring the wife. And next time they go, how about if you come to our house and have dinner? And that's the kind of relationships I built with the buyers. I built a personal bond with them. And the other thing I did is, being in New York, like where especially during the heyday of New York, now it's not so much of a heyday anymore. But, if the buyers were in Minnesota, if they were in Amarillo, Texas, if they were in Albany, New York, wherever they were, Fort Lauderdale. I spent much time learning about where they live and the marketplace rather than talk about New York, New York, New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about like your area,
Mm-hmm.
where you live. Let's go out to your places. I used to hang out, like I wouldn't just fly in and fly out. I made sure I gave everybody quality time, and I
Mm-hmm.
took an interest not only in them, their families, but wherever they lived.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I built my relationships over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, some of them are still in place from those days, believe it or not.
It helps to be nice.
And they still talk about the Roadrunner days. It's so funny too.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
So that's how the relationships are built. And of course, we talked about, you want to make sure that you're getting your ROI in place, and you're getting the most value for what you're spending. Understanding if it's a developing artist, you have to invest into it, and you're not going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to know that if it's not working, stop spending. Don't put good money into bad.
Yep.
Hopefully you get the artist over the hump and it starts to take care of itself in some ways. And then eventually, if you get to the next record, everybody wants it. You spend less money on the second record and the third record if you start to build a band's catalog.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that all make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And it's interesting because Case understood that without being a metalhead.
He's very good for financials. He understands money, and he was very good about that. And I think he gave everybody a trust, autonomy, and freedom. Just deliver for me.
Yeah.
He was very good about, like, he didn't get in your way, and he didn't as long as you were good at communicating what he needed to know, and he saw the results of whatever the vision was, that's all he wanted.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's what makes him a good leader, isn't it, though, I guess, because it's an inclusive atmosphere as opposed to hit it till it works. Yes.
He was very good about that.
Yeah. So when you join in 1992, so you're coming in as the label's expanding and trying to move away from death metal and thrash metal and trying to take a more alternative route.
Well, I got there. I guess you would start. I mean, you had they were still very underground, but you had your Carnivore, which became Typo Negative. You had a very early Sepultura. You had a very early Fear Factory.
Yep.
It was nowhere near, I don't think when I got there, it was still a very underground label. And then I guess this kind of leads into the Typo story, which was the breakthrough for Roadrunner. Case came to me and said, I want a gold record. I go like, okay, all right. Let's talk about the bands and all that. And the decision was Typo Negative. But then the next,
really, so you actually sat. The objective was Case went, I want a gold record, and you went, okay.
Well, we did,
as if that wasn't the objective all along.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came together. We both thought about the same thing, because I think about, like, if you think about Typo Negative, they were different than all the other kind of what I call thrash death sound bands, in that they certainly had a different sound, and could be, they had the best opportunity for back then, when you had, like, you not only had college radio, but you had AOR, your crossover rock and roll, hard rock was all over the country. So that was happening. So that was your best shot. So I guess that was it was the obvious choice, but you also had to talk Pete out of leaving his job, because he worked for the Park District and he was making good money. He had benefits. He thought about his future and his life. He wasn't just doing some fly by night thing. He said, you know what? I'm making good money. I'm working for the city. I got benefits. It's a stable job. I can do this till I retire. So it's not like, so it took some pulling teeth to get him to finally agree to make the band a full-time gig for himself. But then we told him we would invest into him and do all the right things that we were supposed to do, which we obviously did. But it's still chancy and nervous because you're saying you're a young dude and we're telling you to walk away from a good job, a good stable job, to take a chance with this, take the ride. You know what I mean? And he did, and knock on wood, fortunately, everything came to play. So I think the first step was, we had to come up with, how do we get this thing to 500,000? If my memory serves me right, and again, this is a long time ago, we might have been about 100,000 on what we've shipped at that point, maybe 125. So we came up with the concept of the Digipack, which was, the extra CD with the extra tracks. It was a nice, beautiful gatefold package. And that got us another like 50, 75,000 out in the marketplace because it gave you extra tracks. It was a beautiful package. So now you've got some, and I should backtrack a bit. So after, part of what the deal was with the gold record is that he said that I will bring those red people, I will bring them to Amsterdam for the weekend. That'll be what we'll do for them. And I go, okay, that's a pretty cool thing I need to do. That's a lot of people, salespeople. So there's a convention called NARM, which is the United States, I would call it the retailers and manufacturers, which were manufacturers and distributors and record labels. And then you had all the retailers. And so they had a spring one, which was for everybody, including, your big accounts like your Best Buys and Walmarts and Targets and big box retail. And then they also had, in the fall, they had one was just for independent retail / one-stop distributors, which put product into independent retailers. So we happen to be in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I got the different people from Red, that you had your VP of sales and you had your regional VPs. And I said, let's take a drive out to the desert. I got a big cooler full of beer, and we walked up on top of a mesa and sat down. And I said, hey, if we can get this record to gold, I'm going to take you and the staff to Amsterdam for the weekend. And which seems like an unbelievable kind of thing to do. It's a lot of expense and all that. I mean, really, that's how much I think Case really wanted this. And so that's where we kind of, after we got back from Phoenix, Scottsdale area, that we started to put the plan together. The Digipack came first. So that was a good piece to get us back into retail, keep the interest going. But then it was all about the marketing and making sure that the radio escalated. And then it was also about the touring aspect. And I remember, I think we did dates with 9 Inch Nails, Motley Crue, Pantera, Jackal, when they were hot for a minute, and that, and a whole slew of different metal, hard rock type bands. And this thing just started to escalate and kind of take on its life of its own. The momentum started. And then there was the whole Playgirl thing with the visibility there. I think actually Jesse from Jackal was in there as well the month before. So there was a lot of visibility, a lot of interest. They were good looking dudes, they all gothy looking and all that with their black long hair and all that. And Pete was obviously the Jolly Green Giant, and he was an anomaly. He looked like he should be a basketball player in that. So, I mean, I think that, so that's kind of how that whole thing came together. And then we eventually got the gold record. And eventually Kay said to me, now you have to book the travel. I go, book the travel? I mean, so I had you had people like in Seattle and LA and Dallas, and I had to pull them all together, get them to New York, and then we put them on a KLM flight. And then we flew out together to Amsterdam. And it was a great weekend of just, Case taking us out to the countryside and the windmills. We did a uh, what he calls in the he got a boat and we had, beer and food and all that as we went around in the waterways. We went to the Heineken brewery and, we did all the usual tourist stuff that's fun and a lot of just good times and that. So that's kind of the typo story. But then it kind of escalated everything. It opened up the door. Like anything, if you get a hit at a label, it'll open up the door for other hits because now it gives you leverage. And that's how it's always worked, no matter where I've been. Once you get one through, things can start to open up. And then it opened up, for the other bands, they're getting better tours. You can package them together. You can package them separately. But, everything gets better once you start to get you're on the radar of the big boys. I call it, the big boys are big to box retail, big AOR radio, VH1 or MTV, Viacom. That's when you've made it and you got their attention. That will escalate everything for you. And then I think we talked about the diversification. I think they brought in Howie Abrams, and he, his thing was more, he was kind of into a hip hop phrasing, kind of thing, like with 24/7 Spy with his band. And he's always been around the punk scene and the hardcore scene of New York and try to always bring in kind of that stuff. And then we had a guy, Jeff Packman, and Jeff Packman, he brought the alternative vibe. So there was Blue Mountain and Kevin Salem and a few other things that diversified us. Now, it didn't really take off because now you're kind of getting off the brand a bit. I think you have to stay within the brand because, you knew that little red candy bar logo. And I think you have to stick with what you know and what is going to sell because you don't want to confuse your consumer. Your consumer was a metalhead.
Yeah.
And he loved thrash, death, hardcore, and all that other stuff. And I think you try things, not everything's going to work. It probably was not the best idea, but you tried it and, you move on from it.
So I'm gonna hit you with two sort of questions to sort of take what you've said there and make it try and articulate the business side of it. So with Typo, the thing that has amazed me about that story is the fact that Kay said, "I want a gold record," and he decided now was the time. And then obviously you, in your capacity of head of sales, was able to go, okay, well, here's our roster, here's the performance, here's the ones that are somewhat ubiquitous. Here's the death metal, here's the thrash metal. You're not going to get the gold. I'm really fascinated. Do you have an idea why Case thought that was the time? Or do you think he was just like, all right, I've been doing this 12 years now, it's time to...
I think he just said, I want it now. Right. I think he just, I want it now. And, he was kind of a matter of fact kind of guy, and you don't argue with him. Just go with it. It's kind of like when he told me I'm the sales guy. Just go with it because you're not going to win the argument and that. But like I said, behind all that he was a good-hearted person and that. And I think the time was then. He wanted that gold record. I think the obvious choice was Typo because, like we said, it wasn't going to be Sepultura. It wasn't going to be Fear Factory or any of those bands because you're not going to get them the visibility on a bigger level, on a bigger platform. As I think you said, like with Sepultura, with Chaos, they moved into a more groove metal, which they kind of followed into the Pantera vein. And that gave them a wider reach as well. And I think and then I think Fear Factory became more of a technical death metal band. And so within their realm, they grew in their own way. So everybody grows, hopefully, but stays within within somewhat of a boundary of what you are, where you came from, which is Roadrunner, and then it's staying within the kind of the heavy metal classification. There's many subgenres within the classifications and all that.
So why the diversification then? Was that Case communicating, let's try and be major?
I think the gold record was just the gold record, but then I left at the time of Nickelback. I was gone.
Oh, so you were
So
there until like what, nearly 2000?
no, I left in 95, I
Oh,
believe.
okay. Okay.
Now, what happened? Yeah, so I left. I got a job with Mercury Records.
Hmm.
So I made it to the big league then. And so now I was with Kiss, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Scorpions,
Yeah.
Rush. My world changed.
Hmm.
Now I made it to the, where it was, I mean, much more demanding because now you have big time managers and you
Yeah.
have bands that understand what they want. And but I remember my first show was Kiss. I
Yeah.
had that was my first show at Mercury Records, and I got all these big, Danny Goldberg was our CEO. He was the manager of Nirvana.
Hmm.
And so he was our CEO, and you had you had like all these high end, big time people. And I went from Roadrunner, where you kind of had a lot of managers that were friends of the band in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
to being in that league. Yeah, so I left already. I was
Right. Okay.
gone by Nickelback,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was there for a bit, just I think a bit of Slipknot, but not enough. I
Yeah.
left at that point.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So have you ever had to push back on one of the records that was coming out in that 3 year period? Obviously, I imagine your working day is okay, we've got 10, 12, 15 products out this year. There's a metabolic rate at which they're being pushed out. So one will be at, as you say with Typo, it was a year
Yeah.
process. There's one that's coming out next week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So are you vetting the whole process on all these projects that are going on?
Well, I think I think as we got into the age of SoundScan,
Mm-hmm.
so you can document every sale, and BDS, which you can document every spin.
Mm-hmm.
It was very easy. So if a radio guy, if you're following the trends at radio, as an example, both not college, but more your AOR radio, album orientated rock,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say he says, Jim, I got an ad in Dallas. I need to convert those into spins and build up our spin count. So the more times you hit the consumer over the head
Right.
hear it on the radio. But I would like then talk to my red people and talk to the accounts. And I would say, hey, I need a little bit of a favor here. I need to seed the market.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was at that point, it could be Best Buy, all the big boys I was dealing with, as well as all the independent retailers. And now you're legitimized. Roadrunner's legitimized. And so I say we need to seed the market to make sure I have enough inventory there to give me an idea. So when SoundScan comes out every Wednesday at the time, and you can match up the radio and say, okay, I went from getting added the week prior. I got 3 spins on this station, 2 spins here. And what are my sounds? What are my sales? My sales are 2 pieces. So I would tell the radio guy, we need to work harder on getting the conversions and getting more radio there. And then I have the product there already. So I'm in place for us to score if we can get the consumer to connect the dots.
Right. Okay.
It's
So
all about connecting the dots.
It's a web, isn't it? It's a web, and you're at every cross point going, is this primed for a sale? Yeah.
And then it's the same thing. If once we got into the video age, then it's about getting us on Headbangers Ball and getting the visibility there. And then there's the other part of it is that you would want to do making sure you're getting all the interviews. Like, for instance, there's another thing with Typo. I'll backtrack a second. Once we got to the point where people knew who they were legitimized, I would bring them out on the road to see the accounts. And so we'd go to the major accounts. We'd either be playing in the market and I invite them to the show, or I just take them on a promotion tour and just take them and do the whole, grip and grin thing. We love you. Come on out. Let's take some pictures, that kind of thing. So you started to, you build, like, it's like anything else. You use the artist, they're the power of the artist to be able to make the connection, not only myself, but more importantly, because it's all about the music. You know, I'm only as good as the music. You know, all of us are. When people think that they're bigger than the music, shame on them, and that's where things go sideways. But you know, once you connect the dots, let's say with the title with Pete or the rest of the guys, with Best Buy or other accounts, you're doing the same thing at radio. You're connecting all of those dots, so there's a relationship there now. Now those people, the gatekeepers, let's call them the gatekeepers, in all those different areas, retail, radio, video, media. What you want to do is you want to build a relationship, not only your own relationship, but you want to build a relationship with the artist and your contacts, your gatekeepers. And that way, now they'll do more for that artist because they say, oh, that guy, man, he was so awesome. Took pictures of me, autographs, you know, he signed something for my kid, you know, and we, you know, it's that kind of stuff. And that's what you that's part of the whole relationship thing that you do. Now, once you did that with Typo, it gives you a little more, like I said, besides the sales puts Roadrunner on the map on a different perspective, but it gives you more leverage for the next artist and the next artist. And that's how you build the brand, you build the bands themselves, and you build a trust between the gatekeepers and what you do and what you have. You know, again, like it's only, yes, do I have a good gift of gab? Am I a good presenter? Seems like it. Everybody seems to be happy with my thing, but it's always about the artists. If you got the artists, and especially if you got artists that'll work hard and do the things you need to do, it makes it a whole lot easier. And especially if they're good speakers themselves and they're good talkers. I mean, you know, it just, the love fest comes together. And then you get all that momentum will build you and help you with the next band and the next band and the next band. Not all of them will get through, but you'll get better shots with each one.
Yeah. So Brigero come out with their debut, I believe it was in 1993. The cover is a decapitated head. So how are you pushing that to Best Buy?
You don't. You know, you have to understand that that was a very, very underground record. And, you know, you also have to pick your choices. And if that was a side project for Dino specifically, I mean, you know, his bread and butter was Fear Factory. I mean, so it created a lot of, like, you know, noise, and it created a lot of like, oh my God, and all that.
On its own.
It was more of an independent record. Isn't that funny? I think that Facebook picture I'm wearing a Buccaria hat on too. I have a hat on and that, but it's funny because I love the band, but it's very underground, and you can't expect it to. You're not going to get into the major chains just because of the cover and everything.
Oh well.
Is this helpful? Might be.
Oh, helpful. Dude, this is incredible. I want to know how we bring metal to the table again. Because I think like the disruption in the industry for the last 10 years has been like the streaming stuff, the priority setting on social media is not quite the same as it was in the 90s, where you could engineer like the consumer a little bit more. So I'm trying to understand, well, Roadrunner did it best from an indie perspective because they understood the product. So how can we dissect that and understand that? And that's my contribution to the scene, I think.
Yeah.
And this is perfect.
Yeah, you can, if you need to get me on another time, of course, and however I can help. I think in this current environment, I really believe what's been the saving grace has been vinyl.
Yes,
it's an incredible. Well, first of all, believe it or not, Walmart is full on in, and they're now going full store. What, they got like 7,200 stores, and they're online, and they're getting a lot of exclusive color variants. But if you're a smart metal band and you've got a base, you can almost do everything D2C now. And what's happened is, you know, like a band that has a base will say, okay, let's take something that's kind of a cultish thing, like I Hate God, you know, the band I Hate God. So they're putting out a record, I think, in a month or so.
Yep.
They have a Century Media variant, a US version, Revolver magazine version, a merchandise version, a UK merchandise version. BB and I Hate God fan, I bought the first 4 variants. I said, okay, now it's out of control because it's the same record. It's just different colors. You know what I mean? So, but if you're, one thing I can say about people who are into metal, they're all in and they like physical product and they still collect all the shirts and it's all about tangible items. And if you can actually, and then let's say you do an autograph version. You can do the autograph version. Then there's all the bundles besides all that, the different bundles with different things. You know, I mean, you could be as crazy as, Clutch, right? Band Clutch. The high-end bundles. This one comes with the skateboard and a couple other things. But if you buy this one, based on the theme of the record at the time, you get this beautiful wooden box autographed on the box, and you get a hatchet inside, a real hatchet. Because it was about and then we have the third version, which again, it comes with some different goodies, but then you get the Clutch hammer, because it was all about like breaking the shells of the blue crabs because they're from Baltimore and they were cooking, and it was all the theme of the whole thing. And everything sold out. Everything sold out, and everything was like $200, $250 for the package, for the bundle. And so in that world, the D2C is so important, not only from your record label, which are mostly indies, your Bandcamp, and all of those, and then those other areas that you can maybe work with, like Revolver, example, and you can do an exclusive with them, and it's all about D2C now.
But one thing I was going to say was when I was speaking to Richard Bengloff, he was making a comparison between the 90s market, which is one album cycle. Let's assume you're Motorhead and you're pulling out an album a year. You got your $15 crowd who are going to buy the album. You got your $30 crowd who are going to buy the album and come to the show because they do it annually. And then you've got your $150 who are going to buy the collector's edition, go to the gig, do the whole thing. These days, it's as you say, we've created a space for the $60 consumer, and maybe if you're into streaming as well, that maybe the 75, 80, that region is now opened up, and I think that's where it is.
I just bought, I'm still a fan. Let me see if I can, without my wiring. Whoop. Can you see?
Yeah.
And that's just a little corner of the house, and that my house is like a.
Oh, I've lost your audio as the mic slipped out.
How about now?
That's better.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that Motorhead, for the 40th anniversary of Ace of Spades, the high-end box, which I have over here, is this heavy wooden box that looks like think about from the Western days, it would be an ammunition box full of goodies. It cost me $300. And they sold out of them all. $300 for the box. Now, I think the box is amazing itself, just the box, and then all the goodies inside. But just to show you that the consumer, as we've grown older, and I'll use another analogy. I'll take Metallica as an example, those guys are pushing 60. Their fan base is in the 50s, and their fan base has no problem forking over $500 for a book that's signed. They have no problem. Let's say they're doing, they have that All Within My Hands, that's their charity, and they're doing a charity in conjunction with Wolverine boots, and all of that money goes to the scholarship fund for the trades, for underprivileged people who want to learn how to go get a trade. They put people through school. They have no $400 boots that just have a small logo on it. Sold out. Now, so metalheads with money. Metalheads with money. You would not think of it, but now the guys and girls are on their late 40s, 50s, pushing 60. And they have no problem spending $300, $500 on stuff.
No way.
Metal people.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That's the market. Especially, I was going to ask that last week. We kind of touched on it in terms of the gold record and like the top 40 stuff. I think I was asking, in case like celebrate these milestones or anything like that. But I think the answer is really no. But it gave the brand the credibility which it so desperately wanted.
I think when you talk about awards and stuff like that, that I don't think that the consumer, especially the metal kids, are really thinking about that. I think that's the credibility came to the industry that you finally are making it in the bigger realm.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to jump into the questions that we didn't get to last time. And I'm going to start with the most boring one. So, I am a 13-year-old boy and I've got $10 and I walk out of the arcade and past a record shop and I see a vinyl. It's all sort of green and tinted and it's got two ladies kissing each other. And something within me awakens and I give that $10 over to the man in the shop who gives me the bloody kisses by typo. Let's track that $10. Let's figure out how it's just obviously we can be completely generalized on it and figure out.
I'll give you a general, just to kind of give you an idea what it takes into it. You have to put in there, all your manufacturing costs. You have to put in your distribution costs, your shipping costs. So that all kind of breaks down into like probably, if you put it in perspective, I'm just going to make it up. Just kind of a rough estimate about a couple bucks, by the time you do all that stuff, give or take, Then you've got royalties. Royalties are different based on whatever is worked out with songwriters and all the other stuff. So let's say the royalties that go to the band and then they can divvy it up however they divvy it up with their lawyers after they get that is probably, $2, $2.50. So let's say right now we're at 4.5. So, if you give or take, we make about $3.50 to $4. But understanding that we're spending hard money on marketing costs that are not recoupable. So that's,
when you say recoupable, in my head, I'm like, well, everything's recoupable if you sell enough.
Well, no, it is how it works is generally the tour support is a recoupable to the record label. The marketing costs are free to the artist and a hard cost for the label. So generally, so generally, it's
the dog takes umbrage with this.
I know he says that I don't like those terms. He said, but so it's an investment. Let me go back to. Let's take that. My neighbors are pulling out. That's why. They, how they are. They sense everything. But I'll give you an example. Like when I worked for RCA Nashville for 10 years on the countryside, my chairman said, no matter what. Now this is a bigger level of things going on. Our investment into the band, by the time you sign them, you cart them around. You set up the radio, you send out all the stuff, do everything is $1 million. That's a bigger level, just to give you an idea of the magnitude to develop an artist.
Yeah.
So, so the marketing costs could be, that's why you always have to watch, you have to present a P&L based on what you think the return on investment is with your marketing costs of, what I'm going to spend at metal radio, what I'm going to spend on a video, what I'm going to spend on, at the time, print ads, but, now it would be digital ads, so you add all that stuff up and you kind of go work your way backwards based on X amount of, you think that you'll ship, at the end of the day on that cycle, maybe let's say 50,000. And then you have to back out all those costs and see, is this profitable or do I have to cut back on my marketing?
Right. Yeah.
And then on the tour support, that is a recoupable cost. So before the band gets a penny of royalties, they have to pay back those costs.
The tour support is that measured? Right. Let me just sort of like partition that. over there for a minute. So the tour support is typically, is it paying the band's bills while they're away, or is it paying their way on the tour?
Yeah, while they're on tour. So the band will present either their manager, their accountant, they'll present what they need to survive on the road. So they're getting X, and mostly back in those days, you got, your new band specifically, even like to get to the bus level, you had to start to really make some money, because if you're the opening band, you might be making $250 a night, $250 a night, maybe 500. You need rental of a van, you need gas, then you need hotels from time to time because you can't sleep. You're sleeping upright in a van, and a bus is a different deal because you can sleep in the bus. But so they present that to the label, and then we grant them the money for how many weeks that tour is, but then they have to pay that money back before they make any money. So that's their investment. But at the end of the day, if things, I guess, materialize and you start to build momentum, we'll sell more records. They'll get more money on the road. Generally there's, the merch thing, now Case had a merch company too called Blue Grape. About that. Felix
something or other.
He just called me for my birthday. But they were, it was Blue Grape was an excellent merchandise company with good quality goods. So, however the deal was structured with Case for the record side, and then he did the merch. So everything was kind of all in house. He was they were one of the first labels to actually kind of really do a true, 360 deal, so.
I suppose that's the key word, isn't it? There's Case takes everything, which is what it was called in the 80s. There's the 360 deal as we call it today. And what the word you've used there is the true 360 deal.
Yeah.
Forget the money. It's brand.
Yeah. So, I mean, but the good news is we were a brand, and if the band has legs and we can get this thing over the hump, they will become part of the brand, and everything kind of builds upon that momentum.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning as well, when we talk about recoupable and non-recoupable costs, one, we're thinking from the record label's perspective, and often people are thinking it from the band's perspective because they're fans, which makes sense. But I think that the distinguishing factor as well is the band as a touring mechanism and as an operation is separate from the label, which is why the recoupable element is it's dealt with more like a transaction, because even though the label kind of the employer of the band, it's the core mechanics of getting a band on the road and making money, on the road. It's done on the management side. It's not actually, it's done as through the band as a separate enterprise. So when you start compartmentalizing those two operations, it makes it a lot clearer. And through that as well, merchandising is therefore aligned to the label in that sense, isn't it? Well, that's the label having the finger in the pie on the management side.
No, the merchandise is a separate business unit, separate entity. That's just the merchandise company, Blue Grape. So yes, Case owns Roadrunner, he owns Blue Grape. So he's going to be the one who, he's the one that will, garner he'll make the money on this deal once he pays all expenses and everything. Same thing. It's the same thing. You got to print the shirts, you got to ship the shirts. There's a lot of hard costs in there that you have to put into all that. And then go ahead.
Did the band make any money on the tour from selling shirts then?
On the merch, on the merchandise, you make more money on merch because the I think, like, let's take roughly if you sell a t-shirt for $25, call it, let's say that t-shirt may cost you, depending if it's a like a regular black boxy t-shirt, not a slim fit, and that it might cost $250 for the shirt total with the print if it's a one hit print. And then you've got your maybe you got to ship the boxes to wherever they're at, ship them to the venue, and then they put them in their van and all that. So at the end of the day, let's say it's $350, you sell the shirt for 25. So you already see that there's already you're making $20 and some change. And then there's some sort of financial split of some sort of how much we make, how much the Blue Grape makes, and how much the band makes. And generally it's the same thing. You give the band the money up front. And so you give the band, and that's another cost I should tell you about. When you make a record, you have to give that's a recoupable cost as well, because you give the band, the band puts, again, they present you a plan. They need $50,000 to make an album. Yeah, just, use that as a rough, for a metal band at that time versus, like a pop album in this world, it would, cost you $1 million something, so, like a Taylor Swift record. So let's say $50,000 or $35,000. So that you have to sell enough CDs or vinyl to get to the point of breaking even on the recoupable side of the album itself before the band gets paid. And then if they go on the road, another recoupable cost that they're in the hole for. So you got to get yourself out of the hole, before they make any money at all. They'll make some money off of the merchandise, but again, you're giving the band it either can go as you give the band a advance, again, that they can work off the advance, or you do a supply deal, depending on what that is. So, I mean, I would say most of these cases, I would say, again, there's a recoupable advance for merch, for music, and for tour. So if you don't, think of it like as a bank, savings and loan. So if the band is successful and we all win, then, you get, the band makes back their money with the recoupable part. The label makes back their money on the recoupable part, and the band starts getting paid. And then on the other hand, if it doesn't work out, because not everything's going to get through the system, there's going to be a couple clunkers here and there, it's a tax write-off, at the end of the day. So it's a loss. It's a profit and loss, so so that's kind of that's the simplicity, to keep it in simple terms.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I didn't know that Case owned Blue Grape. I didn't know that was his operation. I guess is there any other elements of the true 360 I'm missing? So in terms of the 360, it's all the intellectual property and associated transactions, including licensing, performing rights, all that stuff. That's Roadrunner.
Yes. And publishing.
Yes. As we said, it's the event. What's the difference between publishing and licensing and the intellectual property side? Because I would have thought.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would have considered the publishing. Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. That's cool. I would have considered the publishing to be the same as licensing and performing. I would have considered it any transaction relating to the usage of that IP, that song, that brand, that logo, that album art. I would have considered publishing to just be all of that. Is it? Yeah. Is it something different?
I'm not as well versed on the publishing side because I don't work on that side of it. So cool. I guess we're gonna we may have to Google it and break it down. I'd rather be honest and tell you I'm not a publishing expert in that. So you've got your publishing companies like BMI and ASCAP and stuff like that you work with, and they try to get songs placed into things and that. And so, so how's that sound? Is that okay?
Right. No, that sounds about right. Sounds like there's definitely in the Venn diagram of all those activities, there's definitely a crossover. But as you say, we don't know the exact specifics, and we should probably table it. But you're listed just before like all the other elements of the 360 deal, including like the music, the merch, and those the touring elements and things like that. Is there anything else that I might not have expected?
No, that's about it. I mean, that covers it. And so if you can get if the label can get their hands on all those three pieces, and if the band actually is successful, you'll make more money. There's more revenue streams.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
that's if it's
Did a
successful.
band? Yeah, I've got a big if. I mean, it's very easy for me to just go left now and go, what are the ethics of this? But I don't care. That's not what the questions we're trying to answer on this. I don't think. To be honest, the more I come through this process, the more I'm really sympathetic towards the labels for what, for the services they provide. At the end of the day, it's alchemy, isn't it? Music isn't have an inherent value. It's what people pay for it. And in the same way, you are creating gold out of nothing, and it still propagates more metal happening. So
well, I mean, we're getting into more of a D2C today's day and age. We're not talking 20 or 30 years ago as it was, but today's day and age, you wonder then how much if you're a smart band, you could do everything with your own social media and all that other stuff, and set up your stores with Apple, Amazon, and then you can have your whatever your different vinyl variants and stuff like that. I mean, it's a much more independent world for the band themselves if they're willing to work for it. And then if you think about it, what are the brands out there that are? Epitaph is a brand. Epitaph, they have all those punk bands. Nuclear Blast is a brand, that it's a trusting band to the consumer. And Metal Blade's a brand. There's not that many. I mean, there's a few. I mean, I don't know, maybe Century Media threw in there and Relapse, but I mean, not at the level I think of Metal Blade, Earache. But I think Metal Blade and Nuclear Blast and Epitaph are probably your three brands right now. So you can do a lot of this.
Napalm's gonna. Yeah, Napalm's going to be there, I think. And now that Napalm Records, they've just bought out
Napalm
SPV
too.
as of
Napalm as well. So I mean, there's places to go and places to have a somewhat of a brand, but that's it's a lot of bands could do things on their own too. It's a different world now. Than it was then.
Totally. I mean, to round that question off, then, of that $10, it's variable depending on what the actual investment is on the back end. But you get an idea of where the kind of the macros are: distribution and shipping, the tangible true costs of producing a record are there, and the rest of that back end, including the IP and the band and the royalties and stuff, it's totally variable. Was there ever a band that was salaried on Roadrunner?
I believe, as I recall, that in some cases, if somebody needed some financial help when they're off the road, I think we did something like that. I believe so. I'm not 100% on that, but I think so. Where we helped out. Yeah, I mean, and again, I didn't, that part of it, I wasn't really involved in, in terms of that.
because your sales not.
Yeah, so I've got the finished product, and now I got to, do something with it, hopefully to make money off of it. That's really what I
quite interesting. Because I would have expected. Sorry, go on.
Those kind of deals might have been, like, let's say the band goes to, let's say one of the A&R guys like Monty or something like that, and says, "Hey, dude, we need some money here to survive. We're not working anymore. We're off the road. We're going to go on the road. We need, can we get we're making this record. Can we get some help, financial help?" And then he has to present that to Case and probably the finance guy,
That makes sense, because it's interesting because I guess, like, if you're a busy band on the road and you in between tours, you're like, well, no one's going to give me a job for 8 weeks. You know what I mean? There's temp jobs and stuff, but not all the time. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's more of it's a judgment call based on a band and, probably what we believe is going to be their future. We better invest into them and help them out to keep them positive so they don't fall apart.
Yeah. And I think Sepultura is another example. I think after the Beneath the Remains cycle, they went back to Brazil, and I think Max and Igor's mother was ill. There's a few things going on, and someone had to ring Casey and go, "Look, we can't even get the bus to town to get my mum to a doctor. Can you just give us some money, please? Otherwise, it's all over." And then Case was like, "Yep, no problem." Throws a few grand at him.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
sort of like,
he was a very, if you gave him a common sense reason, he was very generous.
yeah,
Case.
yeah,
Very generous man. He didn't have any problem about investing into things if it made sense.
yeah.
That's the one thing I could say about him. He's a very matter of fact, and then he expects results. But he's a very good man. He's very good.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I'm going to move on to another question we missed. So this is more about the pragmatic side of the time that you were down at the label at Roadrunner. So you came in '92, and this is when the label was diversifying and moving away from thrash and death. At the end of that venture, it didn't. I wouldn't say it failed. There was some good stuff in there. Blue Mountain had 3 albums. It ended up generating like the Ron Berman years of like that hard rock aesthetic, but the core strategy seemed to be, okay, let's move a lot further out. Let's move into alt rock. Let's move into the grunge bit. And it wasn't reactionary because they started doing it before Nevermind, before the Black Album. Was it challenging for you as head of sales to sort of like articulate and understand those as products? Or was it just business as usual for, say, a band like Star or some of the rap ones?
I think when you get into the wheelhouse of what Roadrunner was, and you get into these other areas, and especially if they're developing artists, it's not that because of my relationships and because of the brand itself, you're gonna get favors and you're gonna get help. But I still believe that it goes back to the consumer being confused because it doesn't really, that Roadrunner is a brand built on death and thrash and all this other stuff, and they wouldn't understand Blue Mountain. They certainly wouldn't want Blue Mountain. And then you have to you're not dealing with your typical metal radio relationships. I mean, I deal with all the buyers, no matter what. I mean, those buyers buy other things other than metal too. But, when you're dealing with metal radio and you're dealing with metal press and all this other stuff, and now you have to go out and find this new alternative world, AAA world. I think that music was under the Kevin Salem and Blue Mountain were called AAA at the time. So it was roots music, roots rock, like the same thing. So, I thought, it's like then you try to bring in a specialist. And I believe Case brought in some people that were more savvy in that world to see if they can break it through. I think we also had a dance label for a bit, just a very short period. It was a guy, John Trepp, who worked for us, who worked at Atlantic Records. He had an imprint there, and he came in for a while.
Was that dance label called Lafayette?
Pardon?
Was it called Lafayette, that dance label? Because I think the same happened in the UK, and it was called Lafayette. For UK Roadrunner.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember because none of it materialized. As I recall, because I tried to sell it, but it just didn't connect the dots. And that, so. And I think you're right. Like Blue Mountain had a little bit they had some legs because they seemed to they were kind of in that Jayhawks kind of world, and so they kind of got a little bit of momentum. Kevin Salem never really did. I think the product manager for all that stuff was Peter Cooper. Yeah, at the time, they brought in Peter Cooper, and now Peter Cooper he's living in Spain with his wife. He met his wife there, and he went to go work for some music label in Spain or Portugal, and we just reconnected on Facebook actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's a nice thing about Facebook. But yeah, so he was that product. Now I recall he was the product manager for that, and then I think John Trepp, he just kind of did everything himself because it was just him. He was doing that label. He was a specialist that did all that. But you try things. I give it the Case. You try things, and it either works or it doesn't work. But at the end of the day, it all goes back to what you know best, and that's that's that heavy rock, heavy metal and stuff like that. So
yeah. Definitely, I think Alan had the same kind of take on it as well.
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
was like, you know,
because
'cause he was the guy moving it into the retail, and he like had those relationships. But if you have like a 6'8" cardboard cutout of Pete Steele, you know what you're doing with that.
yeah.
Whereas, you know, as I say, roots music is a bit different.
And
Um,
if you think about like AAA, it's not one of those. It's a very docile fan base that,
yeah,
you know, this, it's not like you gotta, like, when we all, the anticipation of a metal record, the kids are ready to go, you know what I mean, at a record store, or if it was online, now it's online.
mm,
But you know, with AAA or that type of roots rock music, it's like whatever, you know, you'll buy it when you buy it. It's not,
mm.
no, nobody's rushing out for it.
Yeah, yeah, you don't have that the
No.
fanatic thirst for like the tangible elements of it. Um, have you got any? Because obviously your tenure was 92 to what you say 95 or something. Have you got any
Yeah.
stories or anecdotes that I might have missed in my interrogation of the business
Oh,
side?
you know, for me, well, the two things are, I have to say that, like, and I mentioned this before, that if Case didn't force me to be the sales guy, I don't think I'd have the longevity, the career that I'm still doing this 30 years
Mm,
later. You know, so that I'm always, just like I'm grateful to Brian and Mike Faley, I'm grateful to Case for pushing me in a direction I didn't want to go in, but
yeah,
it actually worked out to my favor in the end result, and I'm still at it, believe it or not.
yeah.
At probably one of the more not senior meaning age, you know, in terms of like, unbelievably, I'm still at it. So thank
Mhm.
God, knock on wood, and I keep going. Of course, you know, the monumental event is the whole Typo Negative Amsterdam event. But it was, again, I think the leading up to it, with, you know, whether having the conversation with the Red people, you know, on that mesa, like I talked about, getting together and putting together a plan and doing all that other stuff, and then executing it. It was a thing of beauty, how it all kind of came together on every level, and how it came together with, you know, with Pete and the touring and all the other stuff. And yeah, it was a fantastic journey that it, once a year, those Red people, somebody starts posting stuff and pictures and stuff like that. And then the reminiscing comes together, you know? So it impacted a lot of people
Mm.
in a very joyous, happy way. So those are probably the two. I mean, to me, those are the two things: my career and the Typo Negative, the whole
Yeah, yeah.
process and the end game. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, it was a joy to work there. It was, you know, I was, being a metal guy anyway, it was a joy to work there, and I was just, you know, if you want to progress your career, I didn't want to be called the old metal guy, even though I am the old metal guy. So when I had the opportunity to go to Mercury Records, I had a lot of great, you know, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi,
Yeah,
Kiss,
yeah.
Scorpions, Rush. I got into the big leagues, you know, and then we distributed Def Jam. So I was dealing with Leor and Russell Simmons, and I had
Mhm.
all those, you know, I remember carting Jay-Z around when he was just a young kid, as an example.
Wow.
But what that did is it just legitimized me to the next level of my career, you
Mhm.
know. So and then I kept going, you know. Then I went to RCA Nashville. I took a left turn and went to Country World, you know. But you know, so I'm very grateful for all that.
Yeah.
It was a 3-year run, and then, you know, I had the opportunity, you know, and then you kind of just go where the opportunity is and the money and stuff.
I was going to ask, how did your relationship with Roadrunner end, but you've kind of alluded to it there. So did the opportunities come, or were you looking for it?
It was weird. I had 3 opportunities. One was trying to think of the label. The guy from Island bought it, Blackwell. They had the Frank Zappa catalog. They had Bob Mould, and a few other things. They were up in Salem, Mass.
Right.
So that, I can't remember the label. Oh, shame on me. Ryko disc, Ryko.
Right.
So
Okay.
Ryko. So Ryko came after me. And then the guy who actually owned Eagle, he owns Sanctuary, Terry Shand.
Right. Okay.
And Terry Shand tried to hire me to run Sanctuary, with Maiden catalog and Motorhead catalog and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, my one wife that I had, she said, I don't want to move to Florida. So I didn't take the job. And then right after that, bam, the Mercury thing happened. So all of a sudden, I think my visibility raised to another level, my credibility raised, my name value got up there. And then, people started coming to me, to see if I would be interested in working for them. And that, and I think the Mercury thing, I had to take it because I didn't need to go to Sanctuary anyway, and I didn't need to go to Ryko because it would just be an independent world anyway. Why would I want to leave Roadrunner for that? Because I worked at the best independent label, but the opportunity to work for Mercury, now that's a legendary major label. In terms of like history and stuff like that, and a brand, and so. Yeah, I had to take that job, and it also put me. I was hired by Danny Goldberg. Danny Goldberg from Nirvana fame. So it put me in a completely different stratosphere. Of things. So, well, the last time I saw a case was I took Felix. Got me the interview, recommended me for the job at Bravado. Bravado Merchandise bought Blue Grape. So Felix and a couple other, Uta and some other employees were working at Bravado. They were looking for a new head of sales to run the U.S. operation, and I took the job. And then Roadrunner happened to be having their Christmas party right when I came. I started December 1. And it was, I think, probably the last Christmas party, official Christmas party.
What year are we talking?
They were legendary parties.
What year are we talking?
That would be 2009. So I saw a case. So I left
just before Warner's at the door.
Yes, Warner's at the door. So that would be the last party, and I saw a case at the party. So I had not seen Case from, let's see, 1995 all the way to 2009 was the first time I saw him.
Was he happy to see you then?
Yeah, no, I mean, he was very polite, and, he's a gentleman, he's a true gentleman. So, yeah, it was, and I came in there with Felix. I walked in with Felix and that. So, I mean, he, and of course, Felix worked for him too, so it was nice to see everybody, past and present. I mean, I think at the time you still had some employees that were there from kind of like the Montes and some backroom people. And it's so funny because we're not in the Universal offices right now because of the pandemic, but Spine Farm, the label Spine Farm, they sit right next to my next to Eagle, and Jonas, who did marketing, he's the president. Joan, who I think she did all the royalties and all of Joan Bowling, she may be her and Monty and Doug may be the three longest standing employees. In fact, Warner's kept her on,
right,
because she knows where all the bodies were buried. So they kept paying her. So I think Monty was there for a while at Warner's, and Psycho, the radio guy, Mark Aberson, and Joan. So they continued on, the three of them, for a while.
Epitaph has Kathy
Merritt. So Kathy Merritt was my regional. She worked under me. So she was my sales regional on the East Coast, and then she moved to the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kathy Merritt is at Epitaph now, and it's funny because when I see, again, because it's a person that every time I see her, it's like a lot of hugs and love, because we we did everything together, and it was great. I had a regional in Chicago, Atlanta, and New York. And so those are my regionals. We didn't have regionals before, but then as things got so big, Case let me hire people that were in the field that did the day-to-day. And then I would travel on the big records to see the accounts with them.
Right. Okay.
In other words, they started doing the day-to-day under my direction, so we'd break it down how we want to do things. And then I give them enough rope to hang themselves, You know what I mean? Like you want to give them you want to give them the autonomy to be able to get things done.
You were saying this about Case last week as well. You just deliver for me and I'll get out of your way, I think. And I imagine that's what you were doing to your guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Took very good care. They were very well taken care of in that. So yeah, it was good.
Something which Alan mentioned but didn't divulge any further. These legendary Christmas parties.
Yeah.
What's all this about then?
Well, because we were such, when you were in the New York metal scene, you started out, I remember, you worked at Metal Blade in New York, which was a small office. You had Concrete, which many employees came out of there and moved on to other places. You had Roadrunner specifically. You had Red Distribution because they distributed a lot of metal. So it was a very tight community. And then you had all the majors were trying to get, they're starting Epic Metal, Warner Metal. They were all starting metal departments, and snagging Concrete employees or Metal Blade employees and stuff like that. So it was a tight community. And again, like Case always did a generous Christmas party, but everybody was invited. There was no they can't come. It was an open door to everybody, but it was all metal people. And metal people were a tight bunch,
Yes.
and we support each other, we love each other, and we drink together, and and it was fun. So he did this party every year, and we used to have it on a they call it the frying pan. It was like an old tugboat, historical tugboat. And it was like an old rusty tugboat, but you could, even when there weren't parties that you could rent out, it was a bar. You go there on the weekends and you drink there on the boat. It was always, never left the dock, but it was always tied to the dock. So those parties were great, and it was great because you got to really enjoy time with all your coworkers, but because everybody worked so hard, but also all the other industry people, both from the competing labels, both from Red, from and then all your like your press contacts and your retail contacts and stuff like that. It was everybody left and said, "Wow, that was fantastic." And they were really fantastic parties. It was very generous of Case, again, to do that, and no questions asked. He just always was a generous person.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And this is the last. Okay, I got a couple more questions, but I think this is like the big one. So, because you've worked across the industry in a number of different capacities, a number of different settings. What is it that sets Roadrunner aside? What is it that makes them so special?
I think from a branding standpoint, it just was all like a marquee label, more than no disrespect to Brian and Metal Blade, but at the time I think truly I think the typo thing really took us over the top and got us on the map. And then it was followed by Sepultura, which is actually their, as long as Typo was, because Typo was Carnivore prior. With Sepultura, Machine Head, and all the other stuff, which then led to Slipknot, which took things to a bigger level. And then, of course, you had this radio success, true radio success with something that was not quite in the wheelhouse, but somewhat, with Nickelback.
I think the wheelhouse was being built. That was Ron Berman's time, and there's definitely a lot there, which is kind of which is a trademark Roadrunner Ron.
It was weird because it was just so different than anything else, but it got through the system. It's kind of
totally.
it's kind of like with Victory Records, with being a hardcore label, but then having this crazy success with Hawthorne Heights and Taking Back Sunday.
Day to Remember as well.
Data Remember came later, but Data Remember still had kind of I call it a metalcore or screamcore sound,
right?
Where the other bands were traditional emo bands.
Yeah, totally.
Really, yeah, true emo bands. So, but I think the Nickelback thing is what I was gone, but as I recall, that is the thing that got Roadrunner over the hump, that Warner Brothers wanted that label. And also when I worked with Case, with Lior was enamored by, from Def Jam, Lior Cohn.
Yep.
He enamored by metal, and always we would talk about it because he was fascinated by it because he knew that it was kind of almost like street rap at the time. And since he was the president of Warner Brothers, he finally went after Roadrunner and did that deal. So it was Lior who did that deal, who was fascinated with metal. Unfortunately, they kind of tore it apart and made it as an imprint and didn't use. You should have just left it as is with the employees, leave everything as is, and just let it run because everybody there was an expert. But then it just became an imprint, and they put their own people in place slowly, and it kind of just dissipated. Now they're trying to bring it back and trying to bring the brand back. It'll never be the same. It's never going to be the same because you already stripped it away already.
Yeah.
And so, but it is what it is. Times have changed.
It is what it is. And that's why I'm only going up to 2012, because as far as I'm concerned, that's where the value of the story is, because it kind of did come from nothing and it did do something unique. And it can't.
And remember, we'll never know how great Megaforce could have been. Think about it. Metallica, Anthrax, Overkill, Anvil. It was but once Johnny lost the rights to Metallica, but made a lot of money from it, believe me. But he's probably living off of that still, the royalty rights and stuff. That was the end of it. And that was another distributed label by Red too. Can you imagine that?
I've got the numbers for it. In terms of, I got for this first chapter, I've got the comparison between Combat, SPV, Mausoleum, Roadrunner, Metal Blade, Neat, and Megaforce. Yeah. Megaforce did not put a lot of product out the door.
Which?
It wasn't Megaforce. There weren't a lot. No. Everything they did was like gold dust.
Yes, it was amazing. Marsha just passed away.
Yeah. It's a shame.
It's very, very, very. She touched so many people. She was such a good. Both of them were so awesome.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
So it was such a great time. For metal and for everything. It was just so great. It was so it's. I just think that I still go back to I think the typo thing took Roadrunner over the top and separated them from everybody else. At the time.
Yeah.
Because Brian tried a lot of different things. He was all over the place trying all types of, remember he had Bitch.
Yeah.
Remember the gal Bitch, and he had trying to think of that, Fate's Warning. He did a lot of different things. He tried, that are kind of along the. It wasn't just thrash. He was trying all kinds of hard rock opportunities.
I kind of find that, and this is an unverified and unread kind of opinion, but it feels like Metal Blade is very much a fans label by fans and for fans. And as a result, you have a lot of people on there who aren't going to make any money, but they're going to get the right representation from Metal Blade. Like Satan, for example. Satan are a Metal Blade band, but these are guys who did Satan, stopped Satan, had a career and that had a real job, then reformed in the last few years. They're not going to get a gold record, but Brian's still going to give them support and he's still going to give them the brand. I think it's a fan's venture. Even if they make
Yeah.
$1 and it breaks even and they're in the black as far as they're concerned, I think that's where it differs from Case, where it's like, no, this is a business structure full of fans, not fans, not a label built by fans, if that makes any sense.
Yes, that makes sense. It certainly does. And that,
Have you ever? This is my last one. Have you ever seen a ghost? I ask everyone this. Just
seen a what?
A ghost.
A ghost in what way? I'm sorry.
A ghost in the sense that, hey, you know what? It can range. So some people have heard stuff. Some people. Kyle Thomas of Ex-Order saw a woman in a white gown walking out of his down the steps of his brother's house, like a Victorian gown. David White from Heathen saw a ghost foot in a picture, which he then showed me, which was crazy.
Oh.
Metal Mike says every time he works in Merciful Fate, something fucked up happens.
You know, I no, but then I'll tell you a strange story. I was in the hospital last year for a 10-hour back surgery.
Wow.
And 1 month in the hospital. And the surgeon said, if you want to do all this stuff, I know you're a tough guy, but this is going to be very tough on you. The amount of cutting we're going to be doing, and the amount of metal being inserted into me. I'm very metal now. I'm very metal. And so I said, just do it, because to get it all done, because this pandemic, nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's doing anything. If I'm going to suffer once and just do it all. And it was the most painful, excruciating experience I ever experienced, because there wasn't enough pain medicine they could give me to take the pain away. But then on the flip side of that, I was in a 24-hour bad dream. Like whatever I was sleeping, and then I would wake up and I'd look and I see everything in front of me on the walls. The same thing that my eyes are closed at night. Right. It was the most scariest. I was so freaked out by it all. I tried to escape from my room twice. I unplugged everything. Of course, then everything started beeping and all the other stuff. But I actually got out of my bed and with my walker and started running away as much as I could. That seemed it was almost not even a ghost. It seemed realistic, everything I was seeing. It was so evil and so bad. I was like, wow. I still, to this day, I can't understand how my eyes could be open and awake. I could be drinking coffee and looking at the wall and seeing all this stuff.
That's crazy.
And of course, everybody thought, now it was crazy, because, you know, you'd ask the nurse and the nurse goes, huh? And of course, I think they understood, because I was under so many drugs, you know, pain medicines, opium and Dilaudid and all this other stuff. I was out of it, you know.
It was producing a hallucinogenic effect, obviously.
It was great. It was insane. Yeah, it was scary. I was scared, and I'm a big guy. I was scared. I really was. I mean, and to this day, I still can't figure it out, but I'm glad it's over.
Yeah, man. Have I missed anything, Roadrunner wise? Is there anything that I've not touched on that you think was probably worth diving into? I think we went through the minutiae.
I think we covered everything.
What was in the middle of the circle? What was in the middle of the circle in the office? You said you sat in the desk.
Oh yeah,
shade.
It was crazy when I first got to the. I can't remember what the address was, but at the time it was one big room, and we're all in the room. We were in a circle. And it was like, you know, it was like before you would say, I mean, so you have no privacy. I mean, you could go into another room and I guess, you know, do what you have to do. But I mean, it's literally you're all in a big circle, all your marketing and sales and publicity and there was like no privacy. There was no walls, no nothing. It was think of it as like now everybody's doing the open office thing. This is way advanced. You know, and I remember we moved to that nice offices, I think on Lafayette, and I had this beautiful big office with these glass doors, and it was me and my two, my retail marketing guy and my East Coast regional. And, I was like, wow, this is nice. I mean, with these beautiful offices with plenty of space and big glass doors and stuff like that. Yeah, it was nice. They gave us our own. See, there you go with Case. He gave the marketing people their own office with closed doors, and he gave the sales guys their own office, and then everybody else had partitions, but they had plenty of room.
Yeah.
You know,
so you couldn't
plenty
chat
of
shit
room.
about each other.
Yeah,
Or you could chat shit about each other in private.
Yeah, it was so funny
Sales
when
guys, folks,
when I took the job, and I said, "Wow, this is so strange," because it's like we're really on top of each other, and that. But you know, he made them what he could. I guess when he got to the point where he's making enough money, he made the move and gave us some nice offices. So
yeah,
they were fantastic. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, you know, it's like I said, you wonder where Roadrunner would be today if they weren't bought by Warner Brothers. You know, it'd be interesting to see where they would be, because they would be like Metal Blade in terms of, like, you know, longevity and brand and all the other stuff. But you know, they were bought, and then typical major label, they dismantle something this good.
Yeah, they haven't got that mindset. Well, I think we said this last week. It's that mindset, isn't it? It's you got a 10 times platinum record. Let's do that again. And everyone else on the floor is like, yeah, but we are making money off Sepultura. We're making money off Trivium, but they're just not selling platinum. And they're like, we don't care. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I think isn't Nickelback, they're not even on Roadrunner anymore.
Not anymore.
They're a Warner act now, right?
I don't think they're Warner. I'm going to check. I think they are something different. Bear with me just a tick, because I was surprised by this. I think a lot of those big cash cows did stay with Roadrunner for a couple of years and then moved on.
Yeah.
EMI Canada, is that the latest one? I don't believe that's the latest one. Latest album, Feed the Machine, BMG.
Which one? Oh, UMG.
BMG, yeah.
But you know, nobody cares anymore.
No.
Yeah, I mean, they had their moment. The big moment. Big moment.
Nickelback or Roadrunner?
No, Nickelback.
Oh yeah, but I had a conversation with Mike Gitter about this kind of thing, where Dragon Force were a similar thing. They had that massive breaking point, and then from that they forged their fan base and they forged their audience, so they don't need to break again. They can just play to that cash flow. They can play to that yearly cycle. And Nickelback is obviously the same thing, but it's sort of compounded and slightly bigger. But yeah, you're right. Maybe I don't know the circumstances to Nickelback leaving Roadrunner, and maybe it was like a major mindset where it was like, all right, let's get some more 10 times platinum boys, and they were like, we're not that band anymore. Maybe that was the case.
Well, you know, Case made money off of that, because once he sold the rights to that, he's going to get that, and so and he's got the catalog. I think unless he sold the catalog, I forgot where that's all at now, because I
know he sold all his gold records. He was done with it.
I never really cared for them, you know, but I appreciate what they do and I respect what they do, but it's not my thing, you know.
I like my relationship with Nickelback and that sort of brand of rock, with the exception of Airborne. Airborne was a Ron Berman one. I guess they don't really fall into the same category, but big singles, like the singles. I like the sound. I can't get into their narrative full form. I can't listen to an album end to end each time. It's same with like pop punk. There's like the emo bands, the post emo bands like My Chemical Romances. Nowadays, it's like Creeper and Salem. They're great. They're really good, but I can only get into the singles. I can never get into the albums, and that's another conversation, because that's obviously by design, because the singles are meant to appeal to the massive demographic, and on that demographic, I guess I'm over here on the fringe, which I'm listening to it and I'm liking it, but I'm not going to buy an album.
It doesn't have any. No beat on the bones. It's not. It's post that pop punk and, you know, like that new metal. There's no substance to me. It's a hit. You work the hit, and that's what it is. And then you try to milk it as far as you can milk it. And then you come with another hit. Yeah. You know, it doesn't have. I'd rather have I love to see the body of work of a thrash band or a New York hardcore band or something like that. I like the body of work. I want to be able to feel each song and feel, you know, and there's generally very few times that there are dud on, but when you listen to it front to back, it's all good.
Mm, mm.
It's all
Very
good.
rarely. Maiden are a weird exception because they're one of my favorite bands, but they
Yeah.
in the 2000s sort of went into like it's almost prog metal what they do now. They have like the opening track, which is the rock single, and to tell everyone that there's a new album out, and they won't do another one. They won't do another single. They'll just sell the album of 10-minute songs, and I'm like, fine, totally cool.
Yeah. Well, they're almost like when they playing live or even, their albums, it's almost like an epic, it's like a big, it's not prog, but it runs around the same lines as prog in regards to long songs, and it's a storyline, and the whole deal. I mean, it's much like prog, but Iron Maiden's kind of like its separate entity in the way it runs.
Yeah, completely agree.
I was lucky enough to see they did a very small tour in the US, and they played this club on the south side of Chicago right after the Soundhouse tapes, and I got to see them play.
No way.
Yeah. It's very, very, just a lucky thing. I had to drive quite a distance to get there, but I got there. And I'm happy I did, because, I can't believe I saw Maiden with Di'Anno.
Yeah, that's crazy. You're like a unicorn.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic.
Di'Anno was meant to do his final gig. He made up effectively a Maiden tribute band with other former members like Dennis Stratton and a few other ones, like from those 75 to 80 days. And obviously that didn't happen last year, but I was gearing up to try that. Would have liked to have seen that.
Do you ever go to that bar, Cart and Horses?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I should have done. When I could, but
I always order stuff from them. They have they slowly eke out stuff because they're, during the pandemic, they're trying to milk it. And I guess Harris is good with it because they put the Maiden logo on there, the font, but they have their own line of pint glasses and hats and hoodies and stuff like that. I'm always buying them. Yeah, the cart and Horses. You can, look it up. You can look it up, and then also you'll see it on Facebook. You should like them.
Yeah, that way. The Google SEO is about Cart and Horses, the birthplace of Iron Maiden. I thought it was the Ruskin Arms that was that.
Yeah, that's the play. In fact, they're releasing a CD with members of Iron Maiden, not ex-members and ex-people affiliated with Iron Maiden, doing a covers album. Right. So they're selling that right now. If you got there early, they actually put your name on it as a thank you. And I missed the boat because I was so busy. I got there late when they went to print on the booklets.
Yeah. You know what? You're kind of problematic to me, Jim, because last week when we were talking about product, like the Ace of Spades vinyl stuff, I immediately started looking at Trivium like anniversary LPs and things like that. I was like, I'd love to get some, and I was like, no, I shouldn't do it. No, I can't justify the cost, especially when I'm trying to jump ship from my job this year. And now I'm looking at the Cart and Horses, and I'm like, you know what would be cool? A Cart and Horses pint glass.
They're beautiful. They're etched, beautiful glasses. I have a drum head from them too. Wow. With the art of on the wall, and it's great. They have great merchandise in that. And how about that? You're lucky you got that Slayer Jaeger.
Dude, it's pretty cool. It was one of those. I was like, I'm going to splurge out for myself. I'm going to enjoy myself here, and I don't know when I'm ever going to drink it. I'll save it for the apocalypse.
The UK GM, I reached out to him. He went fishing because he's an avid fisherman, and on Monday he says, Jim, I got your message here. Do you want me to buy that bottle for you? And I said, no, it's sold out. It was gone. Within by the weekend it was gone. And then I said, it's too late. You can't get it anymore. So it's just one of those things that was not meant to be.
Well, I was going to say, if it happens again, I'm on your list of people you can contact to get that sorted out for you. If that happens.
Yeah, but, if they ever do something like that again. I mean, I've gotten, I got the wine in the coffin box. I've got a bunch of different etched pint glasses for Slayer. I've got all the bottles of wine in the wooden boxes.
Man, I'm doing tonight. I'm doing a it's called Headbangers Brew. It's me and there's another YouTube channel called The Pump Room, and it's literally just two people down south who do like a cocktail show. And I just reached out to them and said, look, there's all these bands that do branded boozes. Do you want to like do a tournament or something? And they're like, yeah. So every month now we're going to be putting well, this is just some Light Brigade I had yesterday, but tonight is Road Crew versus Trooper. And we'll just chat shit for an hour and decide which is the best one.
That'll be fun. You know, I have a whole like in the kitchen, I have a whole like all the liquors and beers and stuff like that. I have all the bottles and, you know, all the pint glasses and all that. See, I have all that stuff. In the House of Metal. This is the House of Metal.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna feed my kids.
Yeah, and I gotta get back to work and that. So good talking to you. Keep me posted.
All right, cheers, buddy.
Yeah, take care. Take care of the little ones. All right.
Yeah, I'll send you the great cat video so you know what is going to make us think.